We've reached the end. We expect amazing things for you, just so you know. We are at Uniki Expo. A few days ago, they brought Egypt to the heart of Istanbul. They brought both Karnak and the items from that magnificent exhibition in Cairo. Look, this exhibition is not just any exhibition. Consider the 5,000-year history of Egypt on Earth, within the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. Hundreds of pharaohs came and went. These pharaohs, who considered themselves creators and were the richest men in the world, some had themselves buried in pyramids, while others had themselves buried in underground tombs. They placed all their wealth inside these tombs with themselves. Then they were buried in this way and vanished without a trace. And these tombs over time, first by their own people, the Egyptians, then the Romans, and then those who later occupied Egypt, were plundered by all the states and somehow scattered and spilled out. Only a single tomb, the simplest, the youngest, the least significant, was struck by the state, officially by archaeologists. That child, Pharaoh who died at 18, is the tomb of the book chapter. We will enter through this door. And when we enter, we will fly from Cairo to Karnak. When we enter the Valley of the Kings, in the Valley of the Kings fall, it was found accidentally under the tomb of Ramses, in exchange for the tomb of Tutankhamun. Inside that tomb, 400 of the approximately 5,000 magnificent objects found in that tomb, with 4 chambers. The replicas of around 400 historical tomb findings were brought here. And behind this door, we are waiting for the traces. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We are in the garden of the Topkapi Palace. We will not be filming anything related to the Topkapi Palace. Today, the Topkapi Palace is our starting point. Where are we going from here? From here, we will now pass in front of Gulhane to Troma. A few days ago in Istanbul, a very interesting exhibition opened. The Tutankhamun exhibition. In fact, the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, what remains of those pharaohs to this day, in the year 1926. The only pharaoh's tomb in the world, discovered by official state decisions, personally discovered by archaeologist Carter. Tutankhamun. We will go there, both to see Tutankhamun and what was found in his tomb and in their presence. A 5,000-year-old ancient Egyptian discovery. If you're ready, we will go there. Yes, got on the tram. The Ancient Egypt exhibition. We are very excited. Hopefully, today, as we head to Egypt, you will also see this exhibition. And the originals in Egypt itself, God willing. Even better, you will take a domestic flight in Cairo to Karnak and Luxor. In Luxor and Karnak, you will see the largest temples on earth. In Karnak, there is a recently discovered tomb in the Valley of the Kings near the Nile dwellers. That tomb belongs to Tutankhamun, the famous tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh who was killed at a young age. The items we will now go to, returned from an exhibit, are the items taken from that tomb, the Tutankhamun exhibition. We will talk with Yasmin. Yes, we switched from the tram to the metro. Soon, we will have reached the Egyptian Tutankhamun exhibition. The excitement is at its peak. Yes, we have arrived at Maslak. We exited the metro. Now we are heading towards Unique Expo, Istanbul. There isn't much historical to talk about around here, but soon BC, We will connect to 3,000. Get ready! Yes, we are now very close to the target. Tutankhamun has appeared. 20th, the most important archaeological discovery of the century. The 3,300-year-old mysterious Pharaoh Tutankamon's treasures. They are waiting for us right behind this door. We have reached the end. We are expecting magnificent things, just so you know. We are at the Unit Expo. A few days ago, they brought Egypt to the heart of Istanbul. They brought both Karnak and the items from that magnificent exhibition in Cairo. Look, this exhibition is not just any exhibition. Consider the 5,000-year history of Egypt, encompassing the old, middle, and new kingdoms worldwide. Hundreds of pharaohs came and went. These pharaohs, who considered themselves creators and were the richest men in the world, some had themselves buried in pyramids, while others had themselves buried in underground tombs. They placed all their wealth inside these tombs with them. Then they were buried in this way and vanished into mystery. And these tombs, over time, first by their own people, the Egyptians, then the Romans, and then those who occupied Egypt afterwards, were plundered by all the states and somehow scattered and spilled out. Only one single tomb, the simplest, the youngest, the least significant, was struck by the state, officially by archaeologists. It was the tomb of the child Pharaoh, who died at 18, Tutankhamun. In terms of entering through this door, and when we entered, flying from Cairo to Karnak, when we entered the Valley of the Kings, in the Valley of the Kings, under the tomb of the fourth. Ramses, it was found accidentally, for the tomb of Tutankhamun. Inside that tomb, among the approximately 5,000 magnificent objects found, 400 replicas of the historical tomb findings were brought here. And they are waiting for us behind this door. If you're ready, look now. They placed two famous Ram statues at the entrance of the exhibition. Let me tell you up front now. The ancient Egyptians worshipped almost all the creatures living in the Nile Delta. They attributed divinity, lordship, or godliness to them. If they were to worship, in my opinion, there were two creatures. One was the buffalo, the other was the donkey. But that's how humankind is. They worshipped the monkey, the baboon monkey, the mouse, the crocodile, the hawk, and many more, attributing lordship to them, and they built statues and temples for them. One of them was the ram god. If you ever find yourself in Karnak, as you enter the Karnak temple, on the right side of the long entrance path to the temple, on the left, you will see dozens of these statues. The organizers of the exhibition lead us inside, between two ram god statues, to remind you of this. Now, immediately at the first entry, lies two. The statue of Ramses III welcomes us. Ramses, actually one family too many, quite a lot in ancient Egyptian history. One, two, three. They go on like this. But the most important of these is the second, Ramses III, for Ramses Hutz, the period of Moses. It is believed he was the Pharaoh. There is already a dispute on this matter. The Torah and Israelite sources make certain claims about this. And Egyptology has its own set of claims. It is a known fact that there are three kingdoms called Old, Middle, and New. This period consists of those three eras. During the period of the world's most powerful Egyptian state, two great rulers were number one here. One of them is Re. It was Seti. The other is his son too, Ramses. Ramses proved to be the number one pharaoh with the temples, monuments, and obelisks he established in Egypt. If one day you find yourself in southern Egypt at Abu Simbel near the Sudan border, you will see how great he was in the rock-cut temples he had built for himself and his wife Nefertari. Or if you go to the Karnak area, when you stand next to his giant statue in the Ramesseum temple, you will see that you are only as tall as the statue's thumb. Now these are of course replicas. But when you go to the city Ramses built in his own name, you will see that you are only as tall as his thumb. So you can think of the statue's enormity in this way there. Some sources say that Moses entered the Pharaoh's palace during the reign of Seti. Second, that Ramses drowned in the parted Red Sea, while some say during the reign of the second. Ramses, he entered the palace. You know, he was placed in the water with a basket. The famous story. Lady Asia, Pharaoh's wife, took him, protected him, and raised him in the palace. Some say during the reign of the second. They claim that he entered the palace during the reign of Ramses, and that his son, during Horemheb's reign, was chased in the Red Sea, where Horemheb drowned. In this matter, Egyptology and the history of religions overlap in certain areas and diverge in others. Let's continue on the road. When you come to the exhibition, there is a small cinema here. Here, the presentation is shown. There is a 6-7 minute film here. You watch it. Of course, we won't be dealing with that now. I will take you directly to the place where the findings from the tomb are. And there, in the presence of the artifacts, we will talk about those days. With you! Look, here we see another bust of Ramses II. Of course, when it was found, it was discovered in a somewhat damaged state. Normally, there was both a cobra and a vulture on the forehead part. Cobra and vulture. They were symbols of the upper and lower kingdoms. In other words, it meant I rule over all of Egypt. When you look from here, you can immediately see the cobra on the side. There is a solar disk on the cobra's head. A cobra carrying the disk of the sun god Ammon on its head is clearly visible in this way. Of course, when we come here, when am I most impressed? If I go to Egypt with a group, this is a section I specifically explained to the group at the Cairo Museum. This section you see here, this period is a different era in Egypt. Normally, look at the faces of the Egyptian pharaohs. The slightly round faces you see in Ramses. The cheekbones are not very prominent. The cheeks are plumper. In this situation, for the first time here, the faces of the statues are much flatter. The cheekbones are much more prominent. I've always wanted to explain it like this. By the way, let me say, this exhibition was very good for me. Why? I've been to Egypt 100 times until today. I've toured with countless groups. I've toured personally in the Cairo Museum. You can't get close to these from a distance like this. Now, because these are replicas, I mean, I could even snip Akhenaton's cheek. I mean, we're that close, but I won't do that much. Because Akhenaton is an Egyptian pharaoh I respect a lot. You might say, don't you hear Ram's voice? I don't hear it as much as Akhenaton. Akhenaton. According to the Ottomans and some Egyptologists, he is the pharaoh of the time of the prophet Joseph. Akhenaton, and his wife, Nefertiti. Look, this is a very interesting period. Normally, we know that they believed in the Ammon cult. Ammon, they have a polytheistic religion, like the Jupiter cult of Rome. Zeus, Aphrodite, Artemis, Atona, and the like. These are the Ammon cult. It is this Ammon cult that Akhenaton and his wife Nefertiti, these two abandon it. And what do? They transition to a new belief, to the belief in one God. The name of this one God they believed in is Atona. And there are depictions of how they prayed to him. I will show you all of these. The exhibition is very extensive and magnificent. There are items, gifts. We will discuss these there. That is tomb gifts taken from the tomb because he believed in Atona. Look, the name of this pharaoh you see is actually Aken. Akhenaten, Aken, who worships Atona. It means Aken, who believes in Atona. But lo, and behold our boy. These sons-in-law. Some sources say Akhenaton's son-in-law. Some sources say he is Akhenaton's son. You abandon the belief in one God. Return to the Amun cult, the polytheistic religion. Who is this one who returned? It is the young man Tutankhamun, who gave the opening name to this exhibition and died at 18. Yes, look, pay attention. What is the boy's name? Holding the god cult he believed in is Amon. Tutankhamun, Tutan, who believed in Amon. And this is Akhenaten, Aken, who believed in Aten. This is very important. Well, they have capitals: Memphis, Ramses, Karnak, Luxor. He rejects all of them. He establishes a new city as the capital, and he rules in the newly established city based on the belief in one God. Akhenaten and his wife, Nefertiti. Let's continue. Look, for example, these are a priest and a priestess coming out of the tomb together. I mean, statues of them are made exactly like this. When they die, these are placed inside the tomb. They made it like Ibrahim Tatlis's, but it's not. Yes, look, these are like this too. In ancient Egypt, artists and craftsmen, architects were given great importance. They were extremely valuable and special, and because of this, their names were engraved. They made themselves known in certain parts of the works. For example, there is the pyramid of Saqqara. Saqqara, that famous Egyptian pharaoh Djoser. The man who built that pyramid was Imhotep. He was famous. Today, in Hollywood's mummy movies, they portray Imhotep as a mummy that eats this and that. However, Imhotep was knowledgeable in medicine, skilled in architecture, and had a great understanding of art. In the Egypt of that day, he was like the right hand of the pharaohs. He was the Mima Sinan of that day, Imhotep, the one who built the Saqqara pyramid. Right now, you see a very important design in the background. Let's even get closer. First, if you ever go to Cairo, you will see the hidden pyramids 30 kilometers away from Cairo. The Giza pyramids. What you see here is actually not the largest pyramid. It's an optical illusion. This is the largest, the Khufu pyramid. This is the largest. This is a pyramid made using exactly 2 million stones, weighing between 2 tons and 10 tons. This is the Khafre pyramid. It comes after that one. A very small limestone casing still remains on it. This one is Menkaure. Khufu, Khafre, and Enkidu Menkaure. These are the pyramids of the pharaohs, families. There is the pyramid of Khufu's mother, for instance. There are the pyramids of their wives here. The Sphinx, which is the guardian of Khafre, is located right in front of Khafre here. So, do we know these pharaohs? Would we like to know these pharaohs? If we want to know, here is Khufu, standing right in front of us. He himself, normally, his real name was not Khufu. Khufu is a name given by the British. The Egyptians called him Khufu. Khufu, one of the 7 wonders of the world. This was the amazing man who built the great pyramid of Khufu as his tomb, his eternal resting place. One day, go next to the great pyramid of Khufu. He had 3 state-of-the-art vehicles buried there, thinking he would use them when he resurrected after death. When I say vehicles, don't think of today's cars. They were the royal boats he sailed on the Nile River. He had the royal boats buried there. One of them was excavated and reassembled. In other words, they are the supports. Look, here is Khafre, the pharaoh who owned the 2nd pyramid. None of them wanted to be forgotten. They all wanted to be eternal and were striving for eternal life. Of course, among these designs that tell us about ancient Egypt, we also encounter interesting death portraits depicting Egypt during the Roman period. Yes, don't be fooled by how vividly and lively they are drawn, with their eyes shining. These portraits were made after the people you see here had died. These are the Fayum portraits. We will see these from time to time throughout the exhibition. Ancient Egypt, BC, it ended in 300. Alexander the Great came. He invaded Egypt. Ancient Egyptian history dates back to 3000 BCE. It ends in 300. Why does it end? Era of kings ends because Alexander the Great invades Egypt. When he entered Egypt, he was accepted as a god. Alexander the Great. We have a saying like, until you cross the bridge, you call him uncle. After that, you kiss the hand you cannot bend. The Egyptians, realizing they couldn't fight and defeat Alexander the Great, say, you are our god. They flatter him. He likes it. He says, wow, God, let me build you a city. Alexandrovsk, he establishes the city of Alexander. Then he continues on his way from there to Persia and the police. Alexander leaves one of his commanders there. This commander is the first Ptolemy. It goes on from the first, second, third, and finally to the seventh Ptolemy. Who is the daughter of the seventh Ptolemy? Someone you all know very well. Cleopatra. Cleopatra has her trials with the Roman emperors. She deals with Caesar, she deals with Antony. She has children with them. What else can she do? She has to protect her country. In the end, she crashes against the stone of Augustus. Augustus, of course, is indifferent to love affairs. He attempts to have Cleopatra killed. Cleopatra commits suicide, and Egypt becomes a Roman province. The wealthy Romans settle in the delta of the Nile River. There's even a region called Fayum further down. It's a kind of curve. Very rich lands just like that. Wealthy Romans live in the Fayum region. They have a great understanding of art. They commission their own portraits for after their death. These are the oldest portraits in the world, and they are incredibly three-dimensional. They are placed on top of the coffin. Those Fayum portraits you see will frequently appear in this exhibition. These are the portraits of the deceased, Egyptians, Romans, as you know. Come this way, look, there's a very interesting sculpture here. Now, if you don't know, you might say, well, it looks like a cow. You just walk past it. You might even say, oh my goodness, there's a person underneath it or something. A necklace around its neck, and between its horns there's a, what's there? There's a flower. This flower is known as the crown of divinity in Egypt, and it is also the petal of the lotus flower. It is very important. Do you see the lotus flower? We call this a lotus. So, what is the statue you see here? We actually know it very well. It's something that has been told to us since our childhood. Where is the prophet? Moses saved the Israelites from Pharaoh's oppression in Egypt. Yes, the Quran narrates it. There's no doubt about it. Everything is correct. Then he saves them. The Red Sea parts. They cross over to the other side of the Nile River. According to some, it's the Red Seas. They cross over. They move to the Sinai Peninsula. There is Mount Sinai. Prophet Moses leaves his people at the foot of Mount Sinai. He says, I am going up the mountain. He will stay for 40 days. He will return after receiving the 10 commandments from Allah the Almighty. He takes the tablets. After 40 days, he returns. Let's go. A man named Lamishi from his people collected gold from the people, melted it, and made a calf statue. They are worshiping it. This is mentioned in the Quran, as you know, exactly as I've described it. So, what was the idol that the people made by melting gold and began to worship? It was Hathor, the idol most loved and cherished by the Egyptians. It stands right before you. They made this. Prophet Moses descends from the mountain and sees Aa. They made this, and they are worshiping it. He grabbed his brother, Prophet Aaron, by the collar and shook him. Didn't I entrust this people to you? How could such a thing happen? He turns to the people. He says, you have witnessed so many miracles. Despite all these miracles, this is what ingratitude is indeed. Human beings. Then, of course, they apologize. They ask for forgiveness. Most of them join his side. They continue on their journey. So, that Hathor is with this Hathor. In fact, there are many more around us. I will tell about these from time to time. For example, under the Fayum portraits I just mentioned, there's another friend here. This one is also very peculiar. The Egyptians are terrified of this. This is Sekhmet, jaguar. But a jaguar with feminine characteristics. Look, it has breasts. The body lines show that it is a woman in every way. They were very afraid of this. They believed it brought infectious diseases. In fact, about 2 years ago, when the pandemic first started, I made a humorous video in the Archaeology Museum. Who brought this pandemic, this disease to us? I pointed to Sekhmet and showed it. Some of the followers said, Mr. Tila, if you hadn't laughed at the end, we would have seriously believed it. They said things like that. So that Sekhmet is this Sekhmet. In the Karnak temple, there are special worship centers dedicated to Sekhmet. Now, we continue on our way. We will see so many more things. Wouldn't there be a hippopotamus in the Nile River? There would be. They used to worship the hippopotamus. And as you can see, both from the hippopotamus and from the crocodile, they made deities for themselves. They believed in these. You know, there are famous sayings of Islamic scholars. He who does not attribute everything to one thing becomes afraid of everything. In other words, if you do not attribute the art, this magnificence, these details, in the universe to a single God, a single artist, you will look for an artist, a creator in everything. You will worship everything. In the end, you even attribute divinity, deity, to the hippopotamus. You start to worship it. By the way, there are very beautiful visual materials in the exhibition. There are animations. When you come here, look, we are going down the stairs here. Do you see? Look, we are going down, down, down. We are descending into Tutankhamun's tomb. In the Karnak region, when you enter the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun's tomb is Ento, inside the valley. This tomb, which remained hidden for centuries and was not found by anyone, was discovered by Howard Carter in Chandanji in 1926. Why did no one find it? How did he manage to discover it? Look, they are currently guiding us room by room in Tutankhamun's tomb. Look, behind the wall. We have moved to the section where the actual burial is. The actual burial. An 18-year-old boy lies here. Look, now we have exited from there again. We are going to a third wall. So there are exactly 4 rooms here. I will show you the drawings shortly. It returned to the beginning in this way. Look, step by step it leads us into the temple. On the right and left, there are tomb guardians, Ushabtis, and others. Let's see the real ones. While walking through the exhibition, we are also greeted by the Rosetta Stone. Rosetta, this is the key to the hieroglyphs. 18th. At the end of the century, British and French archaeologists, of course, had separated Egypt from the Ottoman Empire. They are diligently working on ancient Egypt, the history of the Pharaoh's era. They encounter countless hieroglyphic texts, engraved on stone, inscribed on papyri, but they don't know the language. Then, a stone is found in the Rosetta region. The stone, you see, was actually discovered by a French archaeologist who was a linguist. Champollion finds this. This becomes the key to the hieroglyphs. Why? Look, at the top, the same text is written in hieroglyphs. In the middle, it's written in Demotic. At the bottom, it's written in Greek. Champollion already knows the Greek immediately. He deciphers it. From this, he deciphers the Demotic and the hieroglyphs. And thus, what each hieroglyphic symbol means. The British were officially competing in those days as well. And the champion wins the race. In other words, the French archaeologist deciphers it. Look here. We see a picture of Champollion, a very smart man. And thus, the mysterious 5,000-year-old history of Egypt is revealed in its entirety. I mean, look, I am a person very interested in ancient Egypt. 15 years ago, I hired a private car in Cairo. I hired 2 assistants. From Egypt, I traveled 2,000 kilometers from Cairo to Abu Simbel, along the Nile River, going down from here and up from there. And I visited every pyramid and underground tomb I came across. I entered all those that were permitted. I am a person who is this passionate about the subject. For example, some theologians criticized me. Some of those studying at Al-Azhar said, Mr. Talha, these people have put themselves in the place of God the Lord. Why are you interested in them? They said. However, there was something they forgot. In the Holy Quran, the ancient people that Allah Almighty described in the most detail were the Egyptians. If we understand them well, we can better comprehend those topics in the Quran. When I learned about ancient Egypt, my admiration for Prophet Joseph and Prophet Moses increased 1,000-fold. Don't get me wrong. Prophet Joseph and Prophet Moses are highly esteemed, of course. Sure, we read about God's prophets and move on to the next. But when you see the greatness of Ramses II and how his brother, Prophet Moses, rejected all the wealth promised to him with a mere wave of his hand. Yes. So I'm not saying Koch Sabancı. I'm not saying Koch Sabancı. I'm talking about the world's #1 ruler and his brother. Imagine if such an offer were made to you, everything you desire in the world, in terms of material wealth. Wouldn't you be able to turn it down? Is it easy? When I ask myself this question, I hesitate to give an answer. Here is the prophet. Moses was such a great person. So what needs to be done? One needs to know ancient Egypt. Ignorantly, fanatically. There's no need for that. We shouldn't dismiss it by saying, what is it, sir? We need to travel, learn, and closely see the people described in the Quran and the magnificent figures shining brightly among them in the light of these myths. Yes, we continue. There is a model of the temple of Ramses here. Man, there are two mountains side by side. He carved the mountains. In Abu Simbel, he had two temples built, one for himself and two for his wife Nefertari. He had these temples built. When the waters of the dam rose, these were cut piece by piece and moved to another location. And now it's time to the tomb of Tutankhamun. Now look, there is a very interesting detail here. This four-room tomb of Tutankhamun that you see. In 1926, an Englishman named Lord Carnarvon, a sponsor, and his too. It was discovered by a British archaeologist working under the sponsorship of Harvard Carter. Until 1926, the Valley of the Kings was thoroughly excavated. It was never found. So why wasn't it found only during that period? Look, you see a tiny area in this Valley of the Kings. This area has been pierced everywhere like a molehill. Look, a tomb is accessed from below here. A tomb is accessed from here, from there to another, from there to another. Normally, during the Old Kingdom period, pharaohs were buried in pyramids. Then why did they move underground in the Middle and New Kingdoms? Because after the pyramids were built and completed, the Egyptian people started wondering how they could enter the pyramids. How could they take away the riches inside? How do we turn the corner? They became preoccupied with this. The kings of the Middle and New Kingdoms were not fools. They said, wait a minute, these will be emptied out. What does the Grand Pyramid say? It says it's full of treasure for me. It says, come and rob me. So then they said, let's not build pyramids. Let's bury our riches in hidden underground tombs. You know, in the future, we will definitely be resurrected. When we are resurrected, let the pickles, brines, meats, sweets, money, gold, and slaves all be at our disposal, they said. All of them. The second one, Ramses Horemhebs. Third, fourth, fifth, seventh Ramses, whoever comes to mind, Sethis. They were all buried in underground tombs. These are the pharaohs of the New Kingdom. They were buried there. So why couldn't Tutankhamun's tomb ever be found? The answer is simple. Because Harvard Carter says there is a name called Tutankhamun in the hieroglyphic texts. Other archaeologists say, well, they say he is very insignificant, mentioned in very few places. He died at a very young age anyway. His reign was very short. A shadow pharaoh came after him, Akhenaten. They say he wasn't even given a tomb. He says, I will find it. Research, research, research. It turns out here, look at the top. The Ramses. There was a tomb of the Ramses. So, after Tutankhamun died and was buried, they built another pharaoh's tomb on top of his burial chamber. The archaeologists found the one on top. When they found it, they never thought there would be another pharaoh's tomb underneath. Why would they think so? It normally wouldn't happen anyway. But Carter suspects, so he digs and goes down. As a result of his years-long struggle, he finds this place you see here. Come closer. Look. You go down from here using the stairs. Imagine finding this place. Excitement. And then he enters from here. And after entering, first a section greets him here. Then there's a second section here and a third section here. In fact, they don't find this place at first. Look, there's no connection between here and there. Later on, they check again. There's another place here. They notice it, break through this gap, and pass into here as well. And thus, where the body of Tutankhamun was found, where an apocalypse worth of treasure was found, the world's simplest, most insignificant, youngest pharaoh, they have reached the burial chambers. Are you ready? Shall we start now? Up until now, there were warm-up exercises. From this moment on, we will turn our backs. And the moment we turn around, this tiny, out of the approximately 5,000 artifacts found in the 4 rooms, around 400 were brought to Istanbul. Of course, they are replicas. The originals cannot come. These are very expensive, very valuable. Bringing them here is a very big expense. And when you bring them here, you need to place 100 gods here. It's not just any expense. That's why even the replicas are very exciting. An exact replica awaits us. And we move on. Here, in front of us, are the items from Tutankhamun's tomb. We will see them step by step. First, let's take a look at the drawings of these rooms. What did we say? We said there was a staircase. We descended with the staircase. After descending, the first section we encounter, you will see these one by one shortly. Don't miss it. All of these are Tutankhamun's thrones, or rather his couches. They were sitting in a cross-legged position on top of their couches, all made of gold. First couch, second couch, third couch. These, the special guardians of the tomb. Look, life-sized golden statues. Tutankhamun's chariots, royal chariots. The wheels, everything is intact. When the apocalypse comes, we will need furniture. I am fascinated by this belief in the afterlife of ancient Egypt. Beds. Those are non-perishable food items from the house of pastirma, sausage, and pickles. When you wake up, you'll be hungry. You need food. And as much as the apocalypse, perfume, paint, makeup materials, weapons, and we are entering. Look, the tomb is nested. There are exactly 4 coffins. 1, 2, 3. 4 coffins. Inside the coffin. This time small coffins begin. A total of 7 coffins. Inside there is the mummified body of the public holder. Soon we will see all these coffins mummified and the body as a replica. There's a small temple here. Anubis is present. And inside the temple, belonging to the body of the public holder, there are soft tissues. That is, the heart is here inside a vase. The intestines and lungs are inside another vase. The kidneys are inside another vase. In 4 separate canopic jars inside this temple. Who is the protector? Anubis? They have also covered Anubis so he doesn't get cold. And it appears in this state here. Yes. Let's move on. This, a bust, showing Tutankhamun's childhood, was found in his tomb. As you can see, I'm going through quickly. There are over 400 artifacts. Again, a statue thought to be of Tutankhamun with a cobra on his forehead, meaning it shows the dominance over half of Egypt. Alabaster is one. Water marble, 2 of ancient Egypt's most important underground resources. A set made of alabaster. Items used for storing perfume, wine or similar beverages, and food items. There were special neck supports that held the neck when lying down. Look, the goddess Isis is holding it with 2 predatory animals. The men have some furniture, gold stands. Look, each of these is a replica, but as I have said many times, having gone to Egypt, to the Cairo Museum, I am saying this as someone who has personally seen these items in their original place. These have been made exactly the same as the originals. The wickerwork of that day, the wooden inlays of that day, the metal coatings on wood, the eye-catching stools. In other words, there were dozens of stools and gift chests belonging to a pharaoh who died at the age of 18. When you go to the Topkapi Palace, there are the emblems of the Ottomans, the emblems of sovereignty. The Egyptian pharaohs also had emblems adorned with colorful bird feathers, as you can see. The emblem, staff, sovereignty, and pharaohship were symbols. And we see the world-famous throne of Tutankhamun. It was found inside his tomb. Look, he also had a very young wife. Actually, there is a son on the throne. The son has extended its arms, caressing them. Actually, this son is his father. Aton, the name of the one, God, belief of Akhenaten's God at that time. So, perhaps when they first got married, while his father was still reigning, this was made for him. His father took him by his side and gave him a secondary rulership because the Aton cult is present on it. But later, when his father Akhenaten died, he would reject the Aton cult and returned to Amun. Even his wife, when Tutankhamun died and was placed in the tomb, put a rose at the head of his coffin. And that rose, imagine 1,500 years ago from today. That is BC. This is an event that happened 1,500 years ago. We are BC. A rose was placed 3,500 years ago. In 1926, Howard Carter enters the burial chamber. At the head of the coffin, a rose, a bud. Of course, the rose is completely dry. The moment they touched the rose, it turned to dust. Howard Carter's map is taken. So, the last person to leave the burial chamber was his wife, with tears and prayers. It is believed that she left a rose as she was leaving. These are archaeology. The children's guesses. But look, her husband is young there too. Very young. Both are young, around 16, 17 years old. He is holding her shoulder. Both of their eyes are looking at each other. They truly love each other very much. It's obvious, we see this here. When a person sees these, they say that they were human too. They truly lived like this as well. One cannot help but talk about these things. An interesting detail. Here is where he places his foot. Look at where he places his foot. These are slaves. Especially the Egyptians, right to the south of Egypt, today's Sudanese lands, were known as Nubia to them. They would always acquire slaves from the Nubia region. Pay attention. How do I know that these are slaves? Look, their hands are tied from behind. Let me show you. One moment. Let my cameraman step back a bit. Now look, for a moment, I am a slave. The slaves, for example, you should try it too, I think. You are watching me right now on your screens. Stand up. Try to bring your two elbows together behind you. I can't do it. You are bringing your two elbows together behind you. Let me join my palms. Imagine one of your elbows being forcibly squeezed and tied from behind. The Egyptians would bind their slaves like this. A person's shoulder would dislocate, I don't know how this is done. And pay attention. Now look again. Where they set foot. Look, the hands are brought back to back from both sides. Tied together at the elbows. Do you see? It's a terrifying thing. Well, of course, they were extremely ruthless towards their slaves. We can see them from here as well. Let's continue. Now, first, the original photos taken by Howard Carter when he first discovered these in the underground tomb. Look, they haven't been touched yet. Well, entered, seen, and photographed 3,500 years ago. And in that state, you see Tutankhamun's couches. According to one account, his thrones, look, 3 thrones with Hathor and jaguar heads. These are also food items. Dried foods, like kavut and kurut, pickles, brines, foods to eat when he is resurrected, and various souvenirs. Look, you can see them all here. An incredible design. Of course, all of these originals, as you see in this color, are made of gold. With a Hathor headpiece, there is an Amun-Ra sun disk between Hathor's horns. The couches, the interiors are original wicker, but gold-plated. The foods I mentioned to you. A third taste couch, again, it stands here like this. An amazing thing, completely made of gold. By the way, a set of souvenir boxes in the form of a temple were made in the shape of a temple. The Egyptians had temples in this style and form. As you can see, Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon. When this first emerged, of course, gold tarnishes, as you know, real gold tarnishes. It was removed from the tomb in a tarnished state and carried by the Egyptians. There are gods on the side. These are the gods of the Hadiba family. And Tutankhamun's royal chariot. Look, a horse was harnessed here. A second horse was harnessed here. Right on this iron, you see, they had an idol they loved very much. Horus. Sharp-eyed Horus. He was the son of Osiris and Isis. And on his head, there is again a solar disk. Tutankhamun was standing on this chariot. Magnificent designs. The shield you see here, the swords here, it's very interesting. Look at these swords. Let me show you like this. Look, do you see? These are like today's machetes. They had special swords. These are bows unearthed from the grave. Arrowheads of various sizes. As you can see, maces. We also see them in the Topkapi Palace. Maces, clubs, and flails. Magnificent. Yokes of the horses. They are visible too. For example, when this chariot was first discovered, as you can see, they laid out newspaper sheets while Harvard Carter was examining the chariot. The tomb room, they are filled with excitement. Harvard Carter is here, Lord Carnarvon is here. These are the shields and boomerangs we mentioned. They also used boomerangs similar to those used by the indigenous people of Australia in that era. Look, you can see the slaves. Scenes of black, African slaves, and their defeat at the hands of the gods are depicted. A lot of thrones were found in the tomb. One of those thrones is this one as well. Look, this is another one. It's amazing. 3,500 years ago, slaves were mercilessly bound at the place where they set foot. Look, this time the slaves are also bound at the knees. Their knees are also tied. Their hands are tied behind their backs, as I described earlier. In the middle, we see a person with a beard and a wig. Pharaohs, they wore false beards. Even female pharaohs like Hatshepsut also had a false beard. Above, we see the wings of Isis. What you see is the backrest area, the wings at the very top. Isis, the wife of Osiris, is the mother of Horus. She is a much-loved protective goddess. In other words, it says, I lean my back on Isis. Behind the throne to these matters, in a way, even on the chair, there is a kind of spiritual prayer. In Karnak, there is a tool and equipment dedicated to Harvard Carter, showing his study room. There is a small archaeologist's hut where he worked. That place is also a museum. There, the items he used, telephone, gramophone, clock, bottles, pen holders, these are replicas of the originals. These were brought to reflect that atmosphere to us. There is something here. The people have worked hard. The man worked, went, sweated, and struggled. And ultimately, to the only pharaoh's tomb in the world found with its image. No one else has such a pharaoh. This man found the tomb of the pharaoh that was said not to exist. Yes, let's move forward. Look, there are more different, simpler, common thrones. A very detailed exhibition. I continue. This place is amazing. Now people come all the way here, they tour, it's quite nice. I guess we're finishing up talking about the exhibition. You enter from here, the main exhibition starts here. Yes, there is material here that could be talked about for hours. Here are the items found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Amazing. First, let's see this photo. Look, this is a photo taken by Howard Carter when he entered the tomb. I just showed you earlier. One room was the burial chamber. That's separate. We'll see that shortly. What was in the first room we entered? There were couches and food. In one of the rooms, there were Tutankhamun's organs. The organs were inside a temple-shaped box. This was carried on shoulders with a chariot. And in front of that chariot was Anubis. If you want to see all of these, they are right in front of you. One of the most important things for a person who has died was this. The key of life. Once you have it in your hand, you've made it. In other words, you're set on the other side. What needs to be inside it? You need to take the key of life. In many hieroglyphs of the Book of the Dead, pharaohs are depicted receiving the key of life from the hands of the gods. And what is the most important god for a deceased person? The god of the underworld, the god of the dead. Is Anubis with the head of a jackal. Think of it like this. Just like how the Romans have Zeus, there is a chief god and also an underworld god, Hades. Just like Hades, this is the underworld history of the Egyptians. Have you died now? You are questioned by this. In other words, you are at its mercy. Supposedly, this is what they believed. That's why Anubis is involved in every matter related to the dead. A scale is set up in front of Anubis. And here the sins and virtues of these people were weighed. Yes, let's look at this showcase. In this showcase we see Horus, sharp-eyed Horus. There is a famous Egyptian legend. Osiris is very well intentioned, but his body is torn apart by evildoers. His wife Isis gathers all the pieces. While gathering them, she receives help from her son, sharp-eyed Horus, and thus Osiris is resurrected as the god of mummies. Look, all of these are tombs, guardians Ushabtis. Now, what did we always learn during our school years? That the Egyptians discovered the sundial. It even aligns with the history of religions. Who is the master of the sundial normally? It is Prophet Joseph the prophet. The Egyptians discovered the value of pi. They are number one in geometry. And the Egyptians, who discovered the sundial and that the year has 365 days, would place a servant statue in their tombs to serve them every day after they resurrect. The poorest Egyptians would place tomb servants known as Ushabti, made of clay, while the wealthiest would use gold. Does each tomb contain 365 statues? There are even more. For every 365 days, there are 10 statues. Each group of 10 statues, or Ushabti, has a leader of 10 and a leader of 100. In other words, they have commanders. So the number of statues can reach 400. And each day, one of them is believed to come to life to serve the person in the tomb. They believe in this, and in this way they make sure to include them in their tombs. There is a belief among Egyptians, including Tutankhamun, we will definitely be resurrected after death. But in the afterlife of the Egyptians, there is this question. I will be resurrected, but as what? Will I be resurrected as a king? Or will I be resurrected as a beggar? No one wants to be resurrected as a beggar. Everyone wants to be a king on the other side, to be rich. They make statues related to the life they want on the other side. For example, if the person is a farmer, sheep come out of his grave, small livestock. If the person is a fisherman, boats and ships come out. Imagine, you make a model of whatever you want on the other side and place it in your grave. This is a kind of prayer being turned into a statue. It must be the Egyptian version of making models under rose trees during our Hudreles celebrations to pray. And look, on the raft, the public holding a spear in their hand while fishing, holding the symbols of sovereignty. In their hand, holding on, Leopold. Statues showing its own life cycle have also been placed here. And we've come to this point, the temple-shaped structure I mentioned to you earlier. This box, package, or whatever we call it, is protected by cobras. From end to end, look, there are 4 gods on all 4 sides. God, one of them is the most famous, Isis. Look, I explained this to you at the very beginning, just a moment ago. Hathor, the cow goddess, Isis. 4 gods are protecting this with their hands from 4 sides. Why are they protecting it? What's inside this? This is inside it. So, what's inside this? Inside this, there are 4 vases made of alabaster. This is called a canopic jar. Inside one of them is the heart of the deceased. In another, there are the lungs. In another, the intestines. And in another, the kidneys. In other words, the soft tissue of the body. To mummify a person, you have to remove these soft tissues. They used to extract the brain through the nose. They would empty it. If you don't remove the soft tissues, they will quickly decay inside, and the body you are trying to dry will disintegrate and decompose before it can dry, becoming putrid. That's why these internal organs were preserved in special palm wine. Tomorrow, the pharaohs, when they are resurrected and come back to life, they would take their organs and continue on their journey. This is how we have seen the canopic jars. Look, it continues here. At the moment, they were first found in the tomb. We mentioned that is the discovery of the organs inside the canopic jars. Look, these are again from the tomb of Tutankhamun. Statues. If you notice, they have lifted Tutankhamun onto their laps, standing him up. So these are his servants. They carry him. They carry him on their backs. They carry him on their heads. In other words, they support him in the tomb. Even after death, they help him in this way. This is a prayer. Oh God, let someone carry me on their head after I die. Would you like that? Everyone would. After we die, we will become in need of help. So they have turned that prayer into a statue. This tells us something, right? They were human too. Do you want to enter the grave and decay into nothingness? None of us want that. We all believe there is a hole on the other side of the grave. One day we will come out from there. We will come out, and some even say that the body will come. We will not enter as a soul. In other words, monotheistic religions tell us this. They were human too. Be aware. They also did not want to cease to exist, be forgotten, decay, or disappear. Because of this, they altered the monotheistic religions according to themselves into different positions and forms as a remedy. Now we have arrived here. Look, normally in the original, we will soon see their coffins nested inside each other. Look, there are 4 large sarcophagus coffins. There are 3 stages inside. There are small coffins. These coffins are visible, how they are nested inside each other. And the innermost part is where the body is located. Now we will see these from here. Now, there are 2 special tomb guardians. Harvard Arthur, when he entered the tomb, when he came to the room where the funeral section of the tomb was, he first found something like this. Look, 2 life-size statues, and they opened this place and found the passage because all the rooms were sealed. The doors were covered, woven. They found it, and look, there are exactly 7 nested coffins here, and 7. Inside the coffin is the body of Tutankhamun, mummified. And there were 2 guardians standing watch. They entered from here and went into the funeral room. The exhibition is very beautiful. It's designed. They are literally taking us around Tutankhamun's tomb room right now. Look, we toured room by room, room by room. Finally, we reached the door of the tomb room. Here, there are 2. We will enter the section where Tutankhamun's body is located between the 2 guardian sentinels. By the way, as we entered, there weren't just those guardians, there were other divine guardians as well. Look, Sekhmet, the female jaguar, spreading the most feared infectious diseases of ancient Egypt. With the sun on her head, she waits with the disk of Ra. Whom is she protecting? Tutankhamun. So, if you dare to touch my body, infectious diseases will devastate you. Here we also see Sekhmet. Look around her. Very interesting. Please look at that hairstyle. This is very interesting. Even today in Egypt, I have seen many children in Cairo with hairstyles like this among Muslims in Egypt. For example, the second, there is a hieroglyphic image of Ramses as a child. The hair is gathered from here, and it is brought to the side and flows down from the side. I also describe hair like this a lot now. It flows down to the side like this from here. The same form is present in children during the ancient Egyptian pharaohs period. For example, this is the symbol of Horus. Horus as a child, meaning the hair is flowing from the side. Pharaoh children are generally depicted and made in this way. And here Horus is symbolized like this. Truly, magnificent details can be seen here. Yes, I am between 2 tomb guardians. They are not touching us right now. He must have been scared. Oh, Adim. Imagine Howard Carter. Tomb guardians, dark, dim underground. You see them faintly. And back then, everyone had fears. Right, shortly after the tomb was opened, Howard Carter had a canary. First the canary dies, then his cats die. Then Lord Carnarvon dies. They die one after another. The world press was only writing about these things at that time. The curse of the mummy, the prophecy of the mummy, and so on. And from this, many, many things. And among these, now, we are entering the tomb chamber, the room of the dead. Now, let's look at these first. Of course, when you go to the Cairo Museum, you see the original sizes of these giant sarcophagi. Now, it was difficult for them to make replicas of these in original size and bring them here. It would have been difficult. For this reason, these were made in smaller sizes. So, when Howard Carter entered the room, he first saw this, which was the size of a massive room. This was opened and this came out from inside. This was open and this came out from inside. This was open and this came out from inside. 4 gold-plated sarcophagi. Look, we are showing this to help you understand the event better. The exhibition is very beautiful, well prepared. Even a person who knows nothing about Egypt, Egyptology, or the era of Tutankhamun could solve the event by touring the exhibition on their own, reading the text, and examining the models. Look, the first large sarcophagus, the second sarcophagus, the third sarcophagus, the fourth sarcophagus, the fifth sarcophagus. The fifth sarcophagus is smaller. Now I will show it to you. Inside it, as you can see, there are 3 coffins. Inside the third coffin is the funeral of Tutankhamun. Now, 4 large sarcophagi remain here. Look, with what you have seen the 4 sarcophagi. Now, after the 4 sarcophagi, we are going to the 5th tomb. By the way, the setup is perfect. I am truly impressed. I congratulate those who contributed. They did a very good job. I want to take a photo like this. You should enter the exhibition here and take a photo like this. You should take a buddy photo with Tutankhamun rising behind you like this. I mean, it's an incredible thing. Here's the deal. The holding Kamon. Fourth, after the sarcophagus, 5th, the sarcophagus is there. Inside it, there are these coffins. At the very bottom, he is there. You can see his approximate body. Look, the body is in its original tomb today. Well, in the museum in Cairo, there are Ramses, Horus, and others, but here, the body is here. His body was examined. It was analyzed. Look, right now it's a replica, but you see the exact same thing. I saw it. I saw his body. You see the exact same thing in his tomb in Karnak? A child who died at the age of 18. An 18-year-old, like a university student, you know? Anomalous. What does anomalous mean? They were practicing consanguineous marriages. They considered themselves divine. You know, like in Turkey, there are some wealthy people like that. They practice consanguineous marriage to prevent wealth from being shared. They take brides from outside and give brides outside. These people have now elevated this matter to divinity. The Pharaoh says, I am, God forbid, a god. He says, I am the creator. Am I going to marry a girl from these wretched people? He says, no way. So who am I going to marry? I am noble. I have a sister who came from the same womb as me. All the pharaohs, you won't believe it. They are married to their sisters or aunts. Of course, always relatives married. What happens? Similar close genes. The children are born with anomalies. Their bodies are weak, sickly. Their bone structures are deformed. They have fleshed out the public's body with a computer. I examined that too. One leg is lame. One of the shoulders is sunken. There is an issue on the side of his head. In other words, a problematic child. Experts say he couldn't walk properly. He walked with a limp. What should I do with such a son? Yes, let's start from here. Look, meanwhile, something very nice has been done. If you ever go to Karnak and enter the tomb of Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings, this will greet you, especially in the burial chamber. The burial chamber has been vividly recreated, and you can see the paintings in the chamber. Howard Carter opened the sarcophagus last, and when the sarcophagus was finally opened, there was the famous, world-renowned mask and the body beneath it. In other words, they reached the body of the deceased. He is following this with excitement there. The official image has been obtained worldwide. That's the excommunication. Look, I am saying it again and again. This is a very important event. Now, what do we see here? First, after the 4 great layers, we see the 5th layer. When the 5th layer was opened, this emerged from inside. When this was opened, this came out from inside. What is this, brother? What would happen if a person owned just one of these? Look at the stones on each one, adorned with precious stones. For each pharaoh dealing with these, the money and wealth involved, you understand, don't you? The magnitude of the exploitation. How is this wealth obtained? From his tears, from this one sweat, they were tyrants. Let's say that, well, ultimately, they were exploiting people. They were the greatest dictators throughout history. Can this wealth be from legitimate money? It's not possible by earning or doing. And in this way, they had established great wealth. Now, let's briefly look at the tomb paintings. These are also very original. When examining ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, if you see a man wrapped in a leopard skin, know that he is a priest. He removes all the hair from his body. For Egyptian priests, body hair is considered shameful and sinful. For example, if we were to time travel to that century in Egypt, all the priests would look like me. They were all hairless. There would be no hair at all at the door. Absolutely. That was a very important event. There would be no hair on the bodies. The body would be cleansed of all hair, and a leopard skin would be wrapped around that bare body. Then, notice this person has been mummified. Look, mummified. The scarab, Khepri, the famous immortality beetle. That beetle was placed here, and what are they doing? The priest offers the elixir of life to Tutankhamun. In other words, he is sending him off to immortality. Look here, pay attention. There is a farewell scene here. Finally, Tutankhamun, that is the pharaoh, is in a mummified state. Everyone has lined up, offering their prayers and gifts. They whisper the final words of prayer and love into his ear. Then they leave him alone in the tomb. They entrust him to God for his journey. The ancient Egyptians believed in this way. Did something catch your attention? Those bidding farewell hold the ankh, the key of life, in their hands. If the key of life reaches the pharaoh's hand, he would achieve salvation and immortality in the afterlife. These are the gods. After the people withdraw, the pharaoh will be entrusted to the gods. And according to the belief of the pharaohs, he will become a god as well. He will continue on his path. According to them, every pharaoh became a god upon death. So there is no pharaoh who went to the other side and was lost. Everyone continues their reign there. The priest, that is. Now, the excitement continues. This time we will see what is found in the burial chamber. In the burial chamber, for example, a detail that has puzzled archaeologists for years. Tutankhamun's dagger. Yes, such a dagger was found. Very interesting. Look, you see an exact replica. The metallic part of the dagger, the blade part, is still being debated. Why? Because there are no iron deposits in Egypt. Okay, there is gold, there is silver, there are riches, there are stones, but there is no iron. This is such an original metal that some sources suggest this metal believe that it was brought to earth by aliens, and that the Egyptians of that time made this dagger from the metal left by those aliens. Some also think it came from Anatolia, where the Hittites were. As you know, they discovered iron, and second with the Egyptians, they fought the Battle of Kadesh. There are also rumors that they obtained this dagger from them. Some even trace the iron of this dagger back to Central Asian Turks. We come to this point. Let me cross over here. Look, this is the part you see now. 7 graves, sarcophagi. Coffins were opened. Harvard Carter opens the 7th one last. When the 7th one is opened, this is revealed. What is here? There is that famous mask. I will show you that mask shortly. That is the final point of our exhibition, the most magnificent point. The pharaoh's body was completely covered in gold. Look, there were gold finger molds on all his fingers. Do you see all of it? The whip and key, sickle you see here. That whip and wrench you see, and the sickle, both are held in a crossed position. On the forehead, a cobra and a vulture, symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt. Look, Isis has taken him under protection with her wings. A shroud, completely wrapped and locked with gold plates, covering even the toes. Golden coverings. Imagine, look at the wealth. The sandals are entirely made of gold, but of course we are looking from 3,500 years later, where only dried bones and pieces of skin remain. So, in a material sense, there was no situation where this body could go to the other side. Yes, we continue. Now we move on to the jewelry section. Look, these are the canes found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Each one is a magnificent, wonderful cane. All of them have human figures, and pay attention. The figures held by the hand on the cane are slaves. In other words, he is holding the slaves in the palm of his hand. Even here I am strong, you are my servants. Even the cane is in the form of a slave. Those who carry it are slaves. This was very important in ancient times. Wealth, by the way, you are very lucky. Why? Look, if you are truly touring this museum in Cairo, it is forbidden to bring in a camera or a mobile phone. Look, it is forbidden to bring them inside the museum. Not even to take photos. Here, you can take photos with your mobile phones as you wish, without flash, freely. This is an amazing exhibition that has come to Istanbul in this sense. Yes, the riches. These were Tutankhamun's jewels, worn on special occasions. There are scarabs on them. Dung beetle. It has a 3-letter name. Don't make me say it now. On YouTube, on the channel. You all know that name. It is a beetle that rolls dung into balls, lays eggs inside, then buries them collectively and reproduces in this way. It has both male and female characteristics. The Egyptians were inspired by this beetle for the idea of entering the grave and being resurrected, and they loved it very much. Look, these are actually the amulets of the ancient Egyptians. For example, there's the scarab, an amulet, a protector. Look, there is also the vulture and the cobra. These amulets, they wore amulet rings on themselves, and they believed they would be protected in this way. In a way like our evil eye beads, like prayer necklaces or talismans with verses of protection written on them. Look, this is also the crown. Again, with the cobra and the vulture. Look, we can see the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt here. Amazing details. These are the treasures that Tutankhamun took to his tomb. These are breastplates. Breastplates they wore during special occasions and ceremonies. Each one is magnificent. You can see them one by one. Divine figures. For example, this is the eye of the sun god Amora. You often see it in subliminal messages. The single eye. The single eye has existed since ancient times. Another dagger of Tutankhamun, completely made of solid gold. And the scarab's other necklaces. Here, a person becomes gold inside and out, you know?
Everywhere, to that extent.
Look, these are again from his tomb. Jewels. I will end the video shortly with the most magnificent object. And the end of the exhibition with the mask. Also, take a look at these. These are also pectorals belonging to Tutankhamun. These were worn over the clothing. It covered the chest from top to bottom. And it displayed his wealth and splendor as it was. For example, please look carefully at the very center of this necklace. Did you see both the vulture and the cobra? The vulture comes from one side. The left side is the vulture's wing. The right side is the cobra's body. Both together. How was it designed? Someone imagined this. Someone designed it. Someone turned it into such an art. And someone took it and wore it. This is how civilization is formed. When you look at it, yes, are we ready? We are moving to the finale. And right in front of us is Tutankhamun's magnificent mask that shook the world of archaeology. You are looking at a death mask. All the colorful stones you see on it are original stones. None of it is painted. Blue jade stones, reds, look here, greens, navy blues, all intertwined. A death mask made by inlaying different stones into gold. Even the pupils are made of stone. The beards are fake beards. An 18-year-old boy, look at his face, it's so obvious. It's so clear that he was a young boy of 18 who hadn't yet grown a beard or mustache. When the coffin was opened, when the lid was lifted, this mask was covering the face of the corpse. Of course, it had darkened because it was gold. Later, it was polished, and this is what emerged. We saw that worldly possessions remain in the world. Neither the holding of the common nor the ram sounds, none of them could take their treasures, not even their bodies with them. In fact, in the Cairo Museum, those who were once the world's richest, most proud and arrogant men who said, "I am a god, who are you miserable humans?" are now displayed completely naked in glass coffins to tourists. They are giving us all a message as a lesson to be learned. Be wise, come to your senses. Do not pretend to be gods while being beings of flesh and bone like us. Know your limits, do not break hearts. Spend this short worldly life in the most beautiful way. and productive way with a friendly understanding. Do not worship worldly possessions. Do not become a slave to worldly possessions. These objects we see give us many such pieces of advice and will continue to do so. In the light of the Quranic verses, please study the history of ancient Egypt more thoroughly. And in the light of those verses, try to see the truths whispered by the prophets Joseph and Moses, which they could not see or were unfamiliar with in their worldly life. In the traces of these magnificent remnants, greetings to you all from the Tutankhamun exhibition in Istanbul.